being with the wrong person would just make me ill. I cannot. Yeah, I'm like, I'm no, I'm not. I'm telling my mom that. I was like,
So, of course, my body
no,
hurts and
I
my
said
joints
I've got a
ache, but
pretty
it's not
content
because of
spirit.
my age. It's because I'm
I am not going to sit up here
Don't let life pass you by.
with
Take care
someone
of
I'm
your
not
brain
feeling.
health.
I'm just,
It
I
may
can't,
just
I
help you
can't do
stay on
that.
top of your game.
as soon as this scene wraps, I'm going to kiss you.
Yes, ma'am.
No,
Gibella
can't
for his
do it.
outstanding performance.
Testing, testing. ABC. 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. ABC. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Did you know water in Gaza is undrinkable?
I'm Marina. I'm 7 years old
Hmm.
and blind. I love gymnastics,
Yeah,
piano, public
96%.
speaking, and riding on the trail bike
Hmm.
with
You
my
know, and
dad.
you don't want
You
to
can
see
help
it,
me
but
with
Audio sounds good on both ends.
thank you,
Help
thank you,
Ravina
thank
and
you
other
so
blind
much.
people by
You know,
making a
all of the
tax-deductible
pain has to
donation of
stop
your
on all
used car,
sides.
truck,
You know,
or almost anything with wheels
Yep.
to the National Federation
you know,
of the Blind. Your donation will help ensure a
it's
brighter
a
future for
whole
blind
lot.
children and adults. Just
It's a
call
whole lot. It's a whole lot.
855-659-9314.
And
That's
and it's really simple for where we are as human beings.
855-659-9314. Or visit carshelpingtheblind.org.
We
That's
all do this on one level.
carshelpingtheblind.org. We will
Or
arrange
another.
to have the
Correct.
vehicle
We
picked
all
up
Yep,
do
if
it.
we're honest.
you
I'm
with
like,
a
there ain't nobody
tax-deductible receipt.
above this.
And if you know someone who is blind that can use our
Real
help,
part of the
email
human condition.
nfb@nfb.org.
Blindness does not hold me back at all. Donate
You know,
today.
and there's that.
The future
So,
depends
but
on teachers.
I thought about you,
Every
and I said,
day, teachers are shaping
1 minute.
tomorrow.
okay, thank you so
starting their
much.
students on journeys
I
that
said,
will
well,
change the
get
course
this.
of
Looky
history.
here.
Right now, in a classroom somewhere in the
And
United
something like
States,
that always comes
there's a
up. You
teacher
know what I'm
inspiring
saying?
a future scientist
Yes.
who will make
Something like
preventing
that that
pandemics
just
their
tends to
life's
come
work.
up because there's
Sharpening
just
the mind of an aspiring environmentalist who will help combat climate change. And generating possibilities for a student who will be the first in their family to graduate college. It all starts with teachers who meet challenges with creativity
30 seconds.
and education for the future. Who work
Thank
towards
you.
a
Here we
school
go.
system
Let's
that
have a
lifts
great
every
show.
child, regardless
Yes, let's have a great show.
okay. And you know when the
and to
pastor's
enable
up,
the full
please put me
potential of our
on
students,
mute so that I can pull
Okay.
a couple. And
and our
pastor,
country.
please ignore
Explore a career that
um,
leads
Sure.
the
you can be proud
my
of.
little chug
Shape the
love
future.
in the background.
10 seconds.
No problem.
Learn more.
No problem.
Oh no! Did he just drop?
No, I'll fix that right now.
Oh, okay. Hey, Michael Ann, how you doing, sweetie? Raphael? We're gonna get that cleared up right away. Oh, and I have someone to send you. We're gonna bring up at 6:30 along with Dr. Gibbs. Okay.
You're live, Miss Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. I think you can hear a dial tone in the background, but we're working that out as we speak. Call me at 773-763-9278. Hey everybody, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. I am Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota as well. We're going to be talking, of course, about this Mideast crisis. And the fact is America is limited in terms of how we can help because we don't have a Speaker of the House. They have the power of the purse. So, you know, they reconvene, the U.S. House of Representatives reconvenes today. Will they be able to work that out? And as more and more Americans are really torn about, you know, all that we spend on war, how is this going to work out? You tell me. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Indeed, I just read an article yesterday that showed that according to this book, Collision of Power, then President Donald Trump wanted to tie, making a deal, he wanted to tie a peace deal in the Middle East to American aid. I hadn't heard that one before. Do you think that that is something that should happen? Because we got to have peace. You got to stop the pain on all sides. I'm praying for Israelis and Palestinians. Got to pray for everybody. You can't, we can't call ourselves honest dealers and really people of goodwill unless we are pulling for everybody to make it. We're all brothers and sisters here. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East and what role America should be playing, and how we need to work all of this out. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. We'll have John Nichols from The Nation magazine talking about it, Dr. David Gibbs, David Swanson from War is a Lie, and Jim Narakis. He's going to be grading the news. I mean, are they giving us balanced coverage? Is that important? I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. And let's talk about it today. It's a story that everyone's talking about all around the world. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Michael Ann Testing. She's one of my original morning stars. I love you, Michael Ann. Andre, my god brother, and shalom to you, Robert. And Raphael, hey, sweetie, how are you? And Robert again, Kenneth, and Barbara Bacon from Oak Park, mighty Oak Park. Everybody like and share the show, like and share the show. And let me turn my phone down so we don't hear all of that. Okay, everybody, here's some of the headlines from the Washington Post. Between 100 and 150 hostages taken from Israel are being held in Gaza. At least 900 people have been killed in Israel since Saturday's surprise attack by Hamas. Hamas is threatening to execute hostages in Gaza. At least 765 people have died. And amid the Israeli airstrikes, Israel has ordered a full siege of the blockaded territory, cutting off electricity, food, water, and fuel to over 2 million Palestinians. Indeed, the cutting off of all of that is considered to be a war crime internationally. So we'll see how this all goes. President Biden is set to speak today on this crisis at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central Standard Time, as the U.S. rushes to deliver military aid to Israel. President Biden was interviewed in a classified documents investigation. The two-day interview concerned papers found at his private office and Delaware home after his vice presidency ended, according to the White House yesterday. He was questioned by special counsel Robert Hur. Dozens of current and former staffers have been interviewed. Republicans are scrambling to choose a new Speaker of the House. Will Kevin McCarthy return? We'll see. Republicans will hold a candidate forum this afternoon, followed by an internal election for Speaker tomorrow. But the formal House vote has not been scheduled. Who's running? Representatives Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, Steve Scalise, Republican from Louisiana. Representative Kevin McCarthy also changed course and said he would be willing to return after his historic ouster last week. Will that happen, everybody? Will that happen? All right, indeed, we have had historic heat, everybody. Extreme heat could make parts of the world unlivable for weeks on end, according to this report. And Vietnam tried to plant spyware on the phones of U.S. officials and journalists. Wow, government spies used posts on X, formerly Twitter, to try to lure Americans, including members of Congress, to visit sites that would install hacking software. Wow. The software can turn on the phone's microphone and camera and retrieve files and private messages. And those are some of the headlines. Oh, no. Inmates will be given ivermectin, and they will each receive $2,000 after settlement. 5 detainees at an Arkansas jail were given extremely large doses of the drug when they got COVID-19 in August 2021. A lawsuit settled last month alleged vision issues, stomach cramps, and diarrhea ensued, according to court documents. Now, ivermectin has been proved to be a cure for COVID-19. Why were they given so much? I don't know. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 58 degrees. It will be partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 57 degrees. It will be clear. In the NFL last night, the Raiders 17, the Packers 13. In WNBA, they're in their championship series. They're resting tomorrow, but tomorrow the Liberties and the Aces will return. In Major League Baseball, Atlanta 5 and the Phillies 4. They are tied in their series. The Diamondbacks 4, the Dodgers 2. The Diamondbacks lead 2-0 in their series. And today the Astros will be facing off against the Minnesota Twins, and the Orioles will be facing off against the Rangers. And those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Pastor Stephen Thurston, of course, on Facebook Live every Friday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, but the newly installed pastor of the New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church, you all have held that pastorate for 89 years.
That's it. Yes, ma'am.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Of course, his grandfather was known as Boy Baby. Like his grandson, they don't age. They stay 21 forever. That's what Dr. King called your grandfather, right?
That's right.
Led
That's
the
right.
charge. And, no one is funny as Black preachers. He said, Boy Baby. That's what we're going to call him. Oh, my goodness, of course, indeed, your grandfather was one of my fathers in the ministry. We're always so grateful for that. But how can we worship with you on Sundays?
You can catch me on the Facebook platform, on the YouTube platform, on the church's stream, New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago. We're kicking off at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, wrapping up around 10:15 a.m. Central Standard Time. Or you can meet us in person if you're in Chicago area at 77th and Cottage Grove. We would love to have you fellowship with us.
I love it. I love it. I need some good news today because we are getting a lot between, the fight about what to do about these displaced persons, these migrants in Chicago. And now we see the Middle East in such turmoil, the likes of which we have not seen really in our lifetime. With a nuclear power. And indeed, there's some discussion about using nuclear weapons tactically, not broadly, but tactical use of nuclear weapons in the most densely populated place on earth, which is Gaza. It's just painful to think that that we don't have a solution to this. And I know that we do, but
sure.
I need some good news.
There's always a better way.
There's always a better way. And peace is possible, is it not, Pastor?
Always. If people will move to the place of emotional intelligence, put ego aside, and move to that common ground, we all have more in common. Reverend Willie Barrow used to say it all the time. We got more that's in common amongst us than that which separates us.
Absolutely.
So I believe peace is definitely possible.
Absolutely. Well, have at it, because I need some good news today. I know I do.
Well, the good news today is that you don't have to leave your comfort zone. I'm wondering, have you ever been told to achieve greatness that you must step outside of your comfort zone? I know that you have. And guess what? I've even suggested it to individuals. It's a platitude that's been regurgitated in self-help books and motivational speeches across the years. But I was thinking the other day, is this really true? Do we really need to constantly discomfort ourselves to reach success? What if actually staying in our comfort zone could be a game changer for our productivity and our happiness? Now, let's be clear about what the comfort zone really is. It's a state where we feel at ease, a place where we're familiar with our surroundings, and tasks thus feel that we're in control. And because of these factors, there's minimal stress, thus productivity often flourishes. Doesn't sound too bad, right? So maybe the narrative that we should always push ourselves into a place of discomfort to grow is flawed. Listen, I've had a few associates, Santita, that were professional athletes. And what I noticed when I thought back about it the other day concerning them was that they actually performed within their comfort zones. They'd repeat the same steps, the same swings, the same passes over and over again until it became second nature. They weren't stepping outside of their comfort zone during the grand performance. They relied on what was familiar and comfortable. Now, does that mean that they were stagnating? No, absolutely not. They were still improving, albeit within their comfort zone. And they were doing it with ease and precision. This is the power of embracing the comfort zone. Their comfort zone became the place where they acquired skill, acquired knowledge, and acquired confidence. And for those of you who've ever learned a second language, I'm wondering and I'm wagering that you probably didn't jump straight into the advanced level course. Of course not. No, you started with the basics, and that was your comfort zone. And then you gradually expanded that zone until you reached the advanced level. So here's the question. Why are we so keen on shunning this comforting, nurturing space when it comes to our personal growth? The comfort zone is not the enemy. It's actually an ally. It's a friend that paves the way for sustainable success. In essence, we need to stop seeing the comfort zone as a boundary, a box that's trapping us. Instead, let's see it as a solid foundation upon which we could build our mastery. And as we grow and as we learn, our comfort zone should then expand, not because we left it, but because we actually made it bigger. I know this is a different way of saying this thing. And to be clear, I'm not saying that stepping outside of your comfort zone is always bad. Sometimes it really is essential, especially when we're faced with unforeseen circumstances or major life challenges. However, the narrative that we should always be in a state of discomfort to grow, to succeed, and to improve, I want to suggest today that that's probably not true. Let's shift the narrative. Let's focus on growth through comfort. I want you to cultivate a mindset today that cherishes familiarity and consistency rather than constant discomfort. Remember that every master was once a beginner who gradually expanded their comfort zone, one step at a time. So here's a radical thought today. Stop leaving your comfort zone and instead start expanding it. That's my challenge to you today, that you would simply grow your comfort zone instead of always abandoning it and walking into uncharted territory. Have an amazing day today.
Amen to that. That's really hard for people, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
because we get stuck. And it's a funny thing when
We
you
get stuck.
watch, I love watching transformations, makeover shows. I will stop
Yes.
everything I'm doing. But it makes people move into the now and leave the past behind. And I remember when they put Mrs. King, Mrs. Correll on, and her hairstyle was iconic. And she was a beautiful woman, inside and
Mm-hmm.
out. And when and everyone wanted to see what she looked like, and boy, oh boy, oh boy, she was stunning. She went right back to that hair. To her, because it was comforting. It was comforting. But boy, she was stunning. Well, she was stunning either way. But I said, wow, because I know when I had started wearing my hair differently, I had fallen asleep in the chair, and my hair had been blown out, and I was like, whoa, whoa, wait, and I almost cried. This was a year ago, because I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I wasn't ready for this, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad, I'm glad, I'm glad. But it's important for us to step outside of
Yeah.
ourselves. Thank you so much for that. How can we worship with
Yes,
you on
ma'am.
Sunday?
Sunday, New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago on Facebook, YouTube, the church's stream, which is available via our website, or you can show up in person. I would love to have you there. Love to welcome you.
I love it. I love it. And everybody, let's support this ministry. It is a ministry that is almost 100 years old, and I just thank God that I'm so glad. I'm really glad that you've accepted this calling. I really am. I think that you have
Yes,
so much
ma'am.
to offer. So much to offer. So blessings to you. Blessings to you. Coming up, we're going to have at the bottom of the hour David Swanson and Dr. David Gibbs talking to us about what's happening in the Middle East. But right now we've got Dr. Shanina Knighton. Dr. Knighton, how are you?
I'm doing okay, Santita. How are you?
Oh, okay. Well, don't you sound nice and calm this morning. Love it, love it.
Well, yeah.
Well, talk to me. What's on your mind today? It is now chilly. It is now autumn.
It is. And so I keep mentioning like fall leaves, winter sneeze. It's been a big topic. I think the other piece is us not understanding the differentiation between flu, RSV, COVID-19, the common cold, allergies, and so many other things that exist. And so just want to remind people that during these times, it's the most important time where you are vigilant when it comes to hand hygiene and what you're doing with your hands. Now, one of the things, and I know I talked about the topic of cars and recirculating air, I just want to touch on steering wheels and how disgusting they are.
Oh.
And so we don't think about it because we talk about our cell phones being our third hand, but your steering wheel is also your third hand if you do a lot of driving to get from point A to point B. So if you are not cleaning your steering wheel and you're touching your steering wheel and you're touching your face, or you're one of those people that's eating on the go, so you got a sandwich in one hand after touching the steering wheel, if you are not cleaning your hands, all of those germs and contaminants that you might have picked up from picking up things in the environment is now on your steering wheel and you're directly ingesting it. So I just want to remind people to make sure that they are cleaning their steering wheel, as it can contain heavy contaminants that can make you sick.
How do you clean your steering wheel? What do you clean it with? I mean, there's some people wrap their steering wheels with leather and, and things like that.
And when they do all of that, you got to think about the crevices of where stuff can get trapped in. And I thank you, Santita, because one of the things that I've been talking about I was going to do is start swabbing them. I have been going around and just wiping them just to show people how dirty they are. But I think actually swabbing them to show what kind of stuff is on there would actually be a really good study. So thank you for giving me that study idea just as we're talking this morning. But yeah, no, the bottom line is it's like whether you're doing it with a rag, whether you're taking a disinfectant wipe, just something to make sure that you are cleaning it off, is important. And naturally, if you are doing a lot of driving, then you at least want to do it 1 or 2 times per week.
Is it better to clean with a disposable towel or a rag? Got me thinking.
A disposable towel would work because, again, the germs that you're trying to eliminate are ones that are going to be from outside. Something disposable would be ideal.
Thinking about my grandma Gertrude. She cleaned with everything disposable and got rid of it. Germs. Just working in that hospital all those years ago, she just couldn't turn it loose. Let's talk about the Middle East, everybody, this crisis. And of course, hey, Dr. Nina, HEYDRNINA, HEYDRNINA. Let's talk with Dr. Shanina Knighton throughout the week and go on social media. She will have you thinking. She got me thinking. That's why I have to ask her the questions that I ask her. Let's talk with David Swanson and Dr. David Gibbs in just a few minutes about the crisis in the Middle East. How did we get here? How do we get out of this? Back in just a minute. Hey, how you doing? I'm printing. Pardon me, sweetie. I am printing.
I know you are.
You know that. And I'm about to get a whole setup. Yes. Yeah, baby, you okay?
Yeah. I'm not. So my line sister was literally just killed about 6 hours ago to domestic violence.
No.
Yeah. So I'm with my fans right now and just really still trying to process, but it would also be Domestic Violence Month.
Want to talk
and
about
so that? I just think it's absolutely, it's one of those things we should definitely touch upon because we don't think about it until we're in it, and long story short, and if you've encountered it. And so I just think it's one of those things, raising awareness and reminding people, to kind of not do the innocent standby effect, but make sure that you're actually, influencing.
Oh, wow, honey, I'm so sorry. How old was she?
46.
Whoa. Honey, I am so sorry.
Sorry. No, trust me, it feels surreal, but I, again, I know that we instruments and God uses us as instruments. So it's important that we continue to, do the work and make sure we share messages, especially as we understand them.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that, things are important to be able to communicate to people.
Yeah, and look at the violence. I think the violence that we're so violent toward each other.
Exactly.
And it
That
comes
part.
from a
Yep.
whole lot of places. And I'm not making, I'm not making excuses for people, but I'm
No,
saying that
exactly.
it comes from a lot of places. And lions and lambs lie down together. We're locked in. It,
Mm,
water seeks its own level. As awful. I mean, I'm sounding like my mom now, but
no, you're not.
it's like no,
I get it.
there's a part of us we're in it.
Yeah.
And I think we have to acknowledge that. But I'm going to be praying for you and your line because it's what, when you're in a family and lines are families, what happens to one happens to everybody, you know?
Absolutely.
Like,
And there's 7 of us.
oh,
So,
really? Oh, wow.
yeah. Yep, only 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know.
But no, I agree.
My whole family's got Parkinson's. Trust and believe. I mean, just
Mm,
and we have bipolar disorder. So every time you find something out about bipolar disorder, we're always looking and trying to, pass the information along. It's just, so, the blessing of having family is also the challenge of it too.
1 minute.
So do we have
absolutely.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes, we have both of your guests on.
Okay, Mr. Swanson and Dr.
So I'm going to go
Gibbs.
ahead and hop off, okay?
Okay, sweetie.
yes,
Sending
good
you
morning.
much love. Give my love to my soul
Thanks.
horse.
Okay.
Okay, love you, sweetie. I know I'm catching you bicycling. Thank you so much. But when we have these kinds of discussions, I just don't want to leave you out, David Swanson. Of course, you've got Dr. David
30
Gibbs
seconds.
with you. Stand by.
Very glad to be here.
So glad to have you both.
Hello, I'm happy to be here as well.
Yes. So thank you. Well, I'm going to. What is that?
10 seconds.
Okay. And that is just about over.
Stand by.
All right. Thank you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show as we watch the events in the Middle East unfold. It's almost as if it's a local story. So closely are we tied to the Middle East and Israel in particular. But that means we're tied to the Palestinians too. Lions and lambs have to lie down together. I've been talking about that for the past couple of days. Opponents are tied to one another. And they're brothers and sisters. Water seeks its own level. We're all time enough for each other, everybody. So now we see according to this Washington Post report, between 100 and 150 hostages have been taken from Israel, and they're being held in Gaza. And Gaza, which is a place in trouble, it's the most densely populated area on Earth. 96% of their water is undrinkable, and now a war crime is taking place because they've been sealed off. That's a war crime, everybody. So what do we say about this? 900 people have been killed in Israel since Saturday's surprise attack by Hamas. 900 people. At least 765 people have died on the Gaza side, but surely the numbers are much, 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 much higher. So how did we get here? How did we get here? And how do we get out? How did we get here and how do we get out? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, the Santita Jackson Show. We are joined, of course, by Dr. David Gibbs, historian from the University of Arizona. He always brings such just an historical perspective, an academic perspective that we really need, where, he doesn't put his thumb on the scales. I really appreciate that, but you can't really do that. That's an historian. Someone else is a gossip. he, of course, the other guest we have is someone who's not a guest, who's part of he's a family member of the show, David Swanson, Executive Director of World Beyond War. Wow. World Beyond War. Can we even imagine that? Let me start with you, David Swanson. What are we looking at with this situation? It's just hard for me to believe that this was a complete intelligence failure on the part of the Israelis and the Americans. It's hard to believe. We're two of the best in the game.
Hi, Santita. Well, I have seen the reports that Turkey had warned Israel, but, there are always warnings, and you don't know which ones to believe and which not. But what we're seeing is the escalation of a conflict that's been underway since 1948 or so, and we are seeing this sort of childish response from many quarters that one must pick one side or the other and declare it blameless, and the other side evil, if not subhuman and animals, as you hear even from the Israeli government. And it's very clear that the Hamas government has chosen not to learn that violence is likely to cause more violence, and the Israeli side has chosen not to learn that violence will likely lead to more violence. And in saying that, of course, we are not, quote, equating the two, because the Israeli violence is thousands of times greater. They get billions of dollars of free weapons every year from you and me, from the U.S. taxpayers, and they get protection in the United Nations. If the UN had listened to the president of Ukraine a week or two ago and thrown out the veto, the United Nations could hold Israel accountable to the rule of law. It can't, because of the permanent veto threat from its permanent Security Council member, the U.S. government, and the U.S. government alone. But the Palestinians also do not learn. The first Intifada in the late 80s, early 90s was principally nonviolent and made huge gains and had huge influence around the world. And the subsequent Intifadas and fits of violence have been extremely counterproductive. And we're seeing that now with the response. It's not a response. It's an escalation of an ongoing genocidal occupation by the state of Israel, funded and supported by the United States. Amnesty International calls it apartheid. Human Rights Watch calls it apartheid. The Israeli human rights groups call it apartheid. And it goes on relentlessly. So, people kidnapping people, threatening people. This is daily life if you're stuck in Gaza, the biggest concentration camp on earth.
When you use that language, it gets you in trouble. I mean, because I don't know how anyone can be above criticism. It doesn't help. It does not help you. I mean, when I'm talking to my mom, or when I see her, she is going to point out something that I have done that needs tweaking. She's going to offer some critique before 24 hours passes, David Swanson. And we're not able to have, I think, a full, honest discussion about this crisis. And I think that it has hindered us from getting out of it, David Swanson. What do you think?
Oh, there's no question whatsoever. You have many people, for the interests of the public pressure applied to them, the financial interests applied to them, or beliefs that they've held for decades, who simply will not criticize Israel, as you have many others who will not criticize in Ukraine. In fact, it's hard to find even a single so-called progressive in the United States.
You just went out. David
sorry,
Swanson.
Can you hear me?
Okay, you went way back.
Yeah.
It just switched.
I'm really sorry. Hang on.
Oh, okay.
Hang on.
No worries.
I'm really sorry. Can you hear me?
No, now we can hear you again. Yes.
Hello.
Oh, yes,
I'm sorry.
we got you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
No, of course we got you.
Okay. So I was trying to say, the reason that President Biden is trying to push through a bill to fund both the war in Ukraine and the Israeli war making with, more free weapons from the United States is because you've got a handful of people who won't do one or the other. But to find somebody with the decency and the courage and the wisdom to support peace in two places at the same time is almost impossible in the U.S. Capitol. So, there goes all the money you might have wanted for anything decent in the world.
Dr. David Gibbs, how did we get here? Yes, and your thoughts, you can respond to what Mr. Swanson, to what David Swanson said. You can respond.
Well, I think that I agree. I completely agree with what he said. I think that what I would add is, from the Israeli standpoint, obviously what happened was horrific. The pictures when saw the attacks in the music festival and so on were absolutely horrific. But the question is, what do you do about it? And I think the answer in a situation like this is the first thing you do is you don't make it worse. I do, the comparable situation, which does come to mind, is the 9/11 terrorist attacks over 20 years ago. And I do remember, right after it happened, I was giving talks, and people asked, what should America do about it? And my answer was, basically nothing, because anything the U.S. does is going to make it worse. And people were appalled by that. People were astonished, I would say that. But that is essentially what happened. The United States, quote unquote, did something about it. We went to war in Afghanistan and Iraq with catastrophic consequences. It made things much worse for us and the world in very obvious ways, killed far more people than the 9/11 terrorist attacks themselves did. And if the U.S. had done nothing, the effect would have been better than the actual outcome. And I'm sure that's what's happening now. Israel naturally is going to, and is already, undertaking these horrific airstrikes against Gaza, intensifying its already terrible blockade of Gaza, cutting off food and medical supplies from people already suffering terribly. And it's going to kill vastly more people in Gaza than have already been killed in the Hamas terrorist attacks. It's going to lead to further cycles of violence and death. It will solve nothing. It will just inflame the pre-existing problem with absolutely no solution whatsoever. The instinctive reaction, basically, in the case of Netanyahu, he's somebody I've been following for decades, and his entire ideology is based on militarism, that enough military force will solve all problems. That is central to the way he thinks. We've seen the opposite. Hamas is, to some extent, the product of Israeli policy. Israeli officials have been open about this. In the 1980s, Israel was backing Hamas as an alternative to what they believed to be the more formidable secularist Palestinian organizations, and Israel was backing Hamas. A very cynical action. And, we have now a classic case of blowback. These were the people the Israelis were backing in the 1980s, and now this is what happens. So Israel is engaging in a very cynical game of using force to solve all of its problems. It's basically been trading off security for power. All right, they give up security and they get power for all that's worth, and that's the way I think Netanyahu thinks. The key question for us as Americans is, what do we do about it, and what is our policy? All right, what the Israelis do, what the Palestinians do, is one issue, but what do we do? And the answer in practice is we're backing Israel to the hilt. Tony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, initially sent out 2 tweets urging restraint in the ceasefire. He deleted those tweets. And then, he's supporting, evidently, directly supporting Israel's airstrikes on Gaza, which are making the problem worse. The United States is now, funneling massive quantities of arms to Israel in favor of a military solution. Anyway, I don't want to go on too long with this, but, the U.S. is clearly contributing, has always been contributing to an intensification of this problem, making the problem worse than it was before. And that's exactly what we're doing now.
Well, given that, David Swanson, how can America be a peace broker when we have our thumbs on the scales?
Well, take the thumb off the scale. That's the start. Stop providing billions of dollars of free weapons to an openly racist apartheid government every year, without question. And Secretary Blinken reportedly has twice now in the past day or so deleted a tweet merely suggesting there should be a ceasefire or some sort of restraint, which nobody would have taken seriously. But that is going too far. He won't even say that. Somebody tells him to delete it. And so I think the second thing is to lead by example. The examples are horrific, as we just heard. This talk of, well, this is Israel's 9/11. Well, everyone understands that to mean this is Israel's license to mass murder at will, regardless of consequences, even if it's counterproductive, which is the lesson everyone has learned, or the example everyone uses as an excuse. As I have had a top Russian official say to me, we can try regime change in Ukraine because Donald Rumsfeld said it's okay. We can put nukes in Belarus because the United States puts nukes in 6 countries in Europe. Examples matter. And the example of taking a crime of 9/11 and not prosecuting it as a crime, but using it as an excuse for war anywhere against anyone at all times, this is a horrific example that needs to be apologized for, set straight. And Israel told, you don't get to follow that example, at least not with U.S. weapons.
Dr. Gibbs, Erica wants to know, well, what is the solution? I mean, where do we go from here? What do we do?
Oftentimes in conflicts like this, there's certainly no simple solution. If there's a solution at all is an open question. But again, my feeling is the one thing you don't do is make it worse. All right. And that's the first order of business. In medicine, there's the phrase, first do no harm. Don't make the patient's condition worse than before. That's very important. It's remarkable how that's accepted in medicine, but that's almost never accepted in matters of warfare. The idea is when you're attacked, the thing you want to do is lash out to attack, even if that makes it worse, which it usually does. And so I think that, my quote-unquote solution would be just don't inflame the situation and increase the level of suffering and destruction. But unfortunately, that's what we're getting here. In terms of long-term solutions, the best solution we've had is the idea of a two-state solution, that the Palestinians get a separate, recognized, secure state of their own based on the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, free of Israeli domination of the sort that Israel has always insisted upon. This was the principle behind the Oslo Accords of 1993. That was the idea behind the Norwegian-mediated Oslo Accords, which really held out so much hope 30 years ago and, foresaw the eventual creation of a Palestinian state separate from Israel, where the Palestinians could have their own state. Israel is, they signed the Oslo Accords, but, the government that came in after the Oslo Accords, led by the Likud party of, Netanyahu, completely rejected the logic of the Accords, has been dedicating their entire efforts to undermining those accords and ensuring they would never really be implemented. And so I think it'd be difficult to get back to the Oslo Accords just because the amount of bloodshed and hatred and anger that has resulted over the last 30 years, I would say more from Israeli policy, but also the Palestinians too, engaging in these terrorist attacks. But it's been Israel that's been in the driver's seat here. Let's be honest about that fact. And given all of that, it would be more and more difficult to implement anything like the Oslo Accord successfully. So I'd say before one gets to an actual solution, first thing is let's not make it worse, which the United States is doing right now by backing Israel in their efforts to basically find a quote-unquote military solution, which is impossible.
We're talking with Dr. David Gibbs and David Swanson of World Beyond War about this Israel-Hamas war. What is going to happen? How can you have a two-state solution when you've got the West Bank on one side and Gaza, and Gaza on the other? David Swanson. How's that supposed to work?
Well, you don't. Okay. Well, you don't have the West Bank yet. Or you have the West Bank chopped up into over 200 little ghettos, each of them threatened and diminished on a daily basis by violent settlers with the support of the Israeli government and the U.S. government. It's past time to be talking about two-state solutions anymore when the Palestinians don't have the territory left for a state. And if you're going to have a two-state solution because one of the states is a vicious, bigoted apartheid state where you have second-class rights based on your religion, well, then it's not going to last anyway. Who can be a neighbor with that state, much less occupy two sides of it? It's never going to work. The solution is to turn Israel into a democracy. Turn Israel into a place where you have human rights based on being a human, not based on having a particular religion, so that even a person of the proper religion from here, from abroad, can go and own land in Israel. But the descendants of the people who were evicted in the ethnic cleansing that created Israel cannot. That's not a state at all. You know, it's not one state or two states. That has to be reformed. And if the United States is going to crow about supporting democracy around the world, then it's number two recipient of free weaponry and military aid, as they call it, should not be a horrific apartheid government.
Call us at 773-763-9278. What is the solution? What is the solution as you see it, everybody? I think that, Dr. Gibbs, do you think that Americans have a dog in this hunt? Or is this something that does not concern us?
You have a caller.
Well, it's going too far to say it doesn't concern us. Of course it concerns us. It concerns everyone. I think the key question here for me as an American citizen is, why is my government giving Israel, I believe the figure is in the range of $4 billion a year. If I'm not mistaken, that's the highest level of foreign aid of any country in the world. Well, not anymore. It's second after Ukraine, okay? It's the number two recipient of U.S. aid in the world right now. It for a long time was number one. And the question is why? Given the fact that Israel is a major human rights abuser. The term apartheid is distasteful, but I don't see any other way to characterize it. Israeli officials themselves recognize this. Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, the former Israeli military chief of staff, he said, I think over 10 years ago, that Israel is headed towards apartheid if it continued on the route it was on. So it's not as if the Israelis themselves are unaware of this fact or completely reject the apartheid label. And so, the key question is, why should we be backing a state that does these things? And there's another thing, too, which is, there are all sorts of problems around the world. This is the same with Ukraine. Why does Israel and Ukraine have such a claim on U.S. resources when there are problems, for example, on a vastly larger scale in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in places like, Afghanistan, which the U.S. had just spent decades basically wrecking? Why not truly humanitarian aid to, for example, eradicate diseases such as, polio, which still has not been eradicated in several countries? Why not focus on things that really help people as opposed to blowing them up? That just never seems to have motivated American officials very much. And that's very clear in terms of overseas spending and overseas aid. The use of U.S. aid for military purposes in places like Ukraine and Israel seems to be far easier to appropriate than things like, boring topics like merely eradicating diseases in poor countries or improving education. Maybe that whole logic has to stop, has to be rethought. Maybe U.S. aid should go to things that actually help people rather than kill them.
David Swanson, World Beyond War. An Israeli spokesman said that the emphasis, quote, is on damage and not on accuracy. They're indiscriminately bombing, killing. Is there anything we can say to pull them back from that? Because I hear the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu referring to the Palestinians as animals, and it's so painful to hear, but it's also, I have to say, as an African American, it's offensive because we've been referred to as animals. Just whenever you dehumanize people, I think it should be offensive to everybody.
I couldn't agree more with what both of you have just said. It's an absolute disgraceful prioritization of of mass murder. If there were some wonderful democratic governments on Earth, I wouldn't want them being sent massive shipments of weapons either. There isn't any way you use murder weapons without violating human rights. But if you're going to be shipping mass murder weapons around the world, and the United States is the leader by far in doing so, many of the places that have wars, like the Congo, don't manufacture a single weapon, then, why be sending them to the very worst governments on Earth? Why is nearly every government on the list of the most oppressive governments getting weapons and in many cases military money and military training from the United States? Why do that when 3% of just U.S. military spending could end hunger, could end starvation on Earth? A little over 1% could end the lack of clean drinking water on Earth. We could transform the world, including this little corner of it. It's not either us or them, for a fraction of what's going into counterproductive, immoral destruction.
Everybody, what are your thoughts? Call us at 773-763-9278. How do we get out of this? Our tax money is helping to facilitate this. And yet we can go another way. But will we? Call me at 773-763-9278. It's something that's, if you turn on the news, this is all they're talking about. Even as we face these migrant crises around the country where we are sending people who are being pushed out of their countries because of our policies. They're being pushed into the under-resourced, economically stressed communities. We've got problems right here. But we're the leader, so we got to do something. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What is the solution as you see it? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Support World Without War. Follow David Swanson and World Beyond War. World Beyond War. We can get there. And of course, Dr. David N. Gibbs on X, which used to be Twitter. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. I just don't even know what to say. When I think of what's happening over there, just my heart is just broken. And I feel like something this time, it just feels like it's worse this time. Am I wrong? Or maybe I'm just being melancholy. I don't know.
Well, the scale of the Hamas attack was unprecedented in Israel's history, at least. The figures I'm seeing this morning, I don't know if they're accurate, are 900 Israelis were killed. Let's be very clear that that's going to be very small compared to the number of Palestinians that are going to die in coming days. But it is nevertheless, by far and away, the largest terrorist attack ever experienced in Israel. The death toll they've experienced over 2 days in the terrorist attack is equivalent to the entire losses Israel took in the '67 war. So this is, it's a sizable number of people who were killed and under undoubtedly very horrific circumstances. There's 150 people held hostage. So from Israel's standpoint, this is a very big deal. And the failure of Israeli intelligence and security is absolutely
second caller
that this could have happened. I think part of it is undoubtedly a kind of contempt Israelis have had, the Israeli security services have had for the entire Arab population. They just don't take them seriously as fighters. We saw this in 1973, 50 years ago. We're seeing it again now, that they underestimated the Arabs' ability to fight. And in this case, to infiltrate. It's still very surprising that this happened from the Israeli standpoint. Unfortunately, what Israel is going to do, at least some of it, will be very predictable. They're just going to engage in this sort of mass killing of people in Gaza who are so tightly packed in to this tiny space. And the results will be even more horrific. Basically, you'll take that 900 figure, have to multiply it many times. In all probability, that's what's going to happen.
So, David Swanson, are you still there?
He is not.
Okay, because I know he had to go. Are you going to have to leave me now, Dr. Gibbs?
If you'd like, I'd be happy to stand for another half hour.
That would be fantastic. I have got Jim Narakis from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. I want him to grade the media because we're only hearing about one side of this. And and let's be clear, everybody. I'm going to go to, of course, Steve and Anita. We've got callers. I want peace. I know that the only way we're going to get peace is for us to. You got to have everybody drop their weapons. I remember certainly about 10, 15 years ago, my father was going to go speak before the Palestinian government about nonviolence, using that as a tactic. And he has always tied Israeli security to Palestinian justice. And he's taken a lot of hits for it. My whole family, we have taken hits.
Mr. Narakis is on.
Mr. Narakis. And, and we paid a heavy, heavy, heavy price for it, but it was the right thing to do because when my parents stepped out on this issue, you had a no-talk policy. So you were not even supposed to mention Palestinians. And Dr. Gibbs and Jim Narakis, I met Yasser Arafat at the World Youth Festival when I was about 14. And when I got there, President Castro and Robert Mugabe and all of these great freedom fighters were looking. They heard that Reverend Jackson's daughter was there. So they were looking for me just out of deference to my dad, just to say hello, and I couldn't wait to take the messages home to him and to my mother, because they also had a great deal of respect for her because of her international work. And what was interesting was when I came back, I was very enthusiastic. I'd been invited to Lebanon. My parents were like, that is a no, you may not go. But I was so enthusiastic. I said, Mom, you all have to do something. So my mother went to see Andrew Young, who was the ambassador to the United Nations in New York. And she said, Andy, you got to do something because this is a situation we don't know anything about. After she had been to the Middle East, and it was just devastating what she saw. The conditions under which Palestinians were living. She said, this is not right. We've got to get things right. And he said, Jackie, if I touch this is the third rail of politics. I don't think you all really know this. And they didn't really know. She said, but what would Martin do? So he went to meet with the Palestinian representative quietly, and you see he got fired. And so then my parents went to the Middle East, and boy, oh boy, we all paid a very, very heavy price. That's the price that I was paying in my Harvard interview, and, a massive withdrawal of support, and dead animals put on our offices, the whole bit, death threats, the whole bit. And in fact, my father was interrupted in his announcement speech in November of 1983 when he was running for president by Rabbi Kahana's people from the Jewish Defense League. But he held to the point that I'm not going to separate Jewish security from Palestinian justice. You must have both. Y'all are tied into each other. Like it or not, hate it, love it, doesn't matter. You're with each other. That's just the way it works. I mean, God promised you a seat at the table in the presence of your enemy because your enemy is God's child too. And I'm just wondering how we get out of this, Dr. David Gibbs and Jim Narakis, because even the reporting that we're getting, and I'm going to ask Jim Narakis about this, it's not balanced. And then you have Prime Minister Netanyahu referring to the Palestinians as animals. That's no way to do that. He knows better. Or he should. I don't know. I do know.
30 seconds.
It's just wrong. And we're not going to win. We're not going to win like that. We're not going to win. So stand by, everybody. Oh boy. Kenneth Rush says that Israel should not be a state but a NATO base. Wow. Okay.
10 seconds.
Stand by. I'm going to ask all of you about it. I had never thought about that.
Stand by.
Come on, everybody.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East. Do you have any solutions? Hey, they can come from people just like you, just like me, ordinary people. God can use us to do extraordinary things, like come up with a sensible solution to this problem that is just ongoing, everybody. Please call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. John Nichols will be joining the show at the bottom of the hour. But we got Jim Narakis from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, grading the media about their reportage. And of course, Dr. David Gibbs is staying with us to weigh in, to chime in. I want to get some of these headlines out the way so that we can get to the rest of this story. Between 100 and 150 hostages taken from Israel are being held in Gaza. At least 900 people have been killed in Israel since Saturday's surprise attack by Hamas. Hamas is threatening to execute hostages, yes, even on television, live. At least 765 people have died amid Israeli airstrikes. Israel has ordered a full siege of the blockaded territory. Indeed, blockading Gaza is a war crime, everybody. Over 2 million Palestinians in the most densely populated area on earth. Biden was interviewed in a classified documents investigation. The 2-day interview concerned papers found at his private office and Delaware home after his vice presidency. Republicans are scrambling to choose a new Speaker of the House. House Republicans will hold a candidate forum this afternoon, followed by an internal election for Speaker tomorrow, but the formal House vote has not been scheduled. Representatives Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise are in the running, but Representative Kevin McCarthy has changed course and said he would be willing to return after his historic ouster last week. Wow, everybody. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 58 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 57 degrees, clear. In the NFL, the Raiders 17, the Packers 13. The WNBA, they have a night off in their championship series, but the Liberty and the Aces will be facing off against one another tomorrow night in the Major League Baseball playoffs. Atlanta 5, the Phillies 4. That series is tied at 1. The Diamondbacks lead the Dodgers in their series 2-0. They won 4-2 yesterday, and today the Astros will be playing the Twins, and the Orioles will be playing the Rangers. Everybody, as we go into this topic, I was shocked when I read about a week ago that 99% of the counties, Americans cannot afford to buy homes. That's right. You generally need 10% down, 20% down. Well, Team Hochberg has another way for you. If you're looking to purchase a home with only 1% down, and no private mortgage insurance, then you need to call Team Hochberg. Let me say it again. 1% down, no private mortgage insurance. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit 56david.com. Up until now, saving for a down payment was the largest challenge borrowers, particularly now, have faced when purchasing a home. Now Team Hochberg has a loan to help listeners who qualify overcome this challenge with this new 1% down loan. Let's review. Team Hochberg wants to help you, your friends, family, co-workers, all of you become homeowners with 1% down. If you qualify for this program, you can overcome this down payment challenge with this new 1%. I can't say it enough. 1% down. Just imagine if it's a $200,000 home, all you need is $2,000. $300,000 home, all you need is $3,000. Yeah, not 30, not 20. If you're purchasing a home, do yourself a favor. Call Team Hochberg to see if you qualify for their new 1% down payment program with no PMI. Call Team Hochberg now at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit them at 56david.com. They've helped thousands of radio listeners, and you can be helped too, everybody. You can secure financing on a new home, and you can even get a credit card that can help you to rebuild or build your credit. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, and get on the road to home ownership today. We've got Jim Narakis from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting joining Dr. David Gibbs, historian from the University of Arizona. You tell me, what about the reporting? Are we getting balanced coverage, Jim Norikis?
Not that I have seen. I have been looking for coverage that treats the humanity of everyone in the situation as equally valuable, and that is something that is really lacking. You get in the coverage of the fighting, of the violence, you are getting a very vivid sense of the horror of people being killed on the Israeli side, of the nightmare of people having their loved ones captured. There are hundreds of people being killed on both sides, and the Palestinians who are being killed are statistics. They're just numbers, and are presented as just a corollary to the violence against Israelis. And so naturally, reading this coverage, you are filled with empathy for the Israeli dead, and unless you have some outside source of information about what's going on there, you're likely to have very very little reaction to the vast numbers of Palestinians being killed at the same time. You may even feel like this is just desserts, because of the way that the situation is being framed by Western news media. And I think that this kind of coverage just fuels the violence and makes it more difficult to get any kind of lasting peace with justice there.
But doesn't this long term hurt Israelis too?
When Israel kills Palestinians, it is always justified in the name of security for Israel, as though inflicting mass violence is somehow a security move, and it's not. You're creating resentment. You're creating a desire for vengeance that inevitably erupts, and which is what we're seeing. The violence that we're seeing in Israel right now is the fruit of years and decades of mass death inflicted on the people of Gaza. I think it's difficult to get the sense if you're just relying on U.S. news media, but over the past decades, 10 times as many Palestinians have been killed by Israel as Israelis have been killed by Palestinians. That comes from the B'Tselem, the leading Israeli human rights group. That is not the sense that you get from when you read U.S. news media. You have no idea that the violence is so unbalanced in this conflict.
Does the American consumer of news have any power to change this, to ask for balanced coverage?
I think that news media have become increasingly insulated from any kind of popular feedback. It's very difficult to get even an email address for people in news media. My sense is that this is the way that media corporations like it. They want the communication to come from the top down. They are not looking for a conversation. I would advise people who are interested in this subject to seek out a variety of viewpoints of sources of information. As I said, B'Tselem is one of the the places I rely on to get factual, objective information about what is going on. And it's often very eye-opening when you compare it to the kind of thumbnail history that you get from establishment news media.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 763-763-763-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Renee Criswell says, Dr. Gibbs, there's extreme racism against Ethiopian Jews who are in Israel. And Takesha says, great point. Ashley King from Memphis is saying this is genocide, plain and simple. And this says a lot of that. And Erica says, I think unless Israel is willing to share their resources and eventually divide them, this will continue. Indeed, so much of this is about land ownership. We keep making this religious, and it really, land ownership is the cornerstone of wealth. I mean, the wealthiest human being on earth was Queen Elizabeth, and now it's her son. They owned and controlled 1/6 of the world's land mass. They controlled seas. That's what. So when you see Harry and Meghan and Catherine and William and these smiling faces, their family, number one, helped create this with the Balfour Agreement. Let's be clear on that, right, Dr. Gibbs? And but they're like at the center of it, but we don't see them there.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think that the origin of the problem is in the 47-48 war during the creation of Israel. You did have the expulsion. There's no doubt about this. What's called the Nakba, what the Palestinians called the Nakba catastrophe, the expulsion of 700 to 800,000 Palestinians during that war. We now call it ethnic cleansing, and that really is the appropriate term here. There's no doubt this happened for a long time. Israel staunchly denied it. Its supporters deny it. I think Israeli historians have fully accepted this did happen, even ones fully supportive of the government. People like Benny Morris, for example, is a very conservative historian. He acknowledges that this Nakba took place. He doesn't use that term, but he acknowledges the facts of it, or the basic facts. And so, you did have the creation of Israel through dispossession, through violence. Now, Israel is not the only country in history that's done this, obviously. This has happened again and again. But that is the origin of the problem. If one wants to say, where did this tit for tat begin? The best place to start is with the Nakba in 48. And so, when the Palestinians say we have this long-standing grievance that's never been addressed, well, they certainly do have a point there. And the people who live in Gaza are the descendants of those who were expelled from modern-day Israel and are now crowded into this tiny sliver of land that effectively is under Israeli occupation. And it really is a very harsh, brutal occupation. And it's really astonishing and amazing that the United States defends this and defends it with our own weapons, but that's what we're doing. I should add the West Bank of the Jordan River as well is also under literal or effective Israeli occupation, as the previous man Swanson from World Without War has noted. And so this really is the origin of the problem here. And, Israel can't claim to be the innocent party in all of this. Israel, as one of the world's significant military powers, vastly more powerful than the people on the West Bank or the Gaza Strip are. Israel is very much more than any other single factor driving this crisis. And again, that doesn't deny that the Palestinians have no right to murder large numbers of people, as Hamas just did, and that certainly doesn't excuse it. But it must be put into a context, and the context is Israel, more than the Palestinians, has been driving this conflict and bears, by any reasonable standard, more of a moral responsibility for what is going on. And the United States, which has been Israel's chief weapons supplier and chief supplier of political support since the early 1970s, the United States also bears much of the responsibility for what is going on there right now. So I think this larger context needs to be considered when we look, and quite rightly, express horror at the Hamas attack on Israel. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Do you think it's important to give this context? Because some people are calling that whataboutism.
Well, the word whataboutism, I don't like it because basically the whole idea here is you want to, have consistency, moral consistency, and you want to examine the larger context. There's always a tendency in the news media when these things happen to pretend, wars come out of nowhere. When Russia invades Ukraine, it's like there was no prehistory to that. We don't really need to know anything about what preceded the invasion. When Hamas attacks Israel, as they did a couple of days ago, we don't need to know anything about what happened before. Well, we do need to know what happened before. And we do need to know the long history of provocation that Israel has been undertaking vis-a-vis the Palestinians. And that's just moral consistency. That's also just basically having an intelligent understanding of what's going on. The word whataboutism is just a way of sort of shutting down discussion and eliminating all context and all, historical background. And we shouldn't do that. We should fully understand the history here.
Jim Narekas, as consumers, I mean, what do we do? I mean, because I'm just wondering if how has the reporting of this particular issue, has it changed over the years, or has it always been this way?
Well, I feel like there is actually much less focus on Israel-Palestine than there were in previous decades. It's become less of an issue that the U.S. news media thinks of as a front burner issue. The idea that this is a crisis that needs a solution seems to have kind of gone by the wayside. And it's contributed to a sense of kind of a quiet occupation where one phenomenon that we've noted over the years is that U.S. news media tend to refer to the situation in Israel-Palestine as relative quiet. And relative quiet means that the dying is only being done on the Palestinian side. When there is dying on the Israeli side, that is when news media in the United States tend to take it seriously, treat it as an important issue, and put some focus on it, which is it's a recipe for encouraging violence when you only pay attention to a problem when the victims of the problem turn to violence. That is, there have been many attempts for Palestinians to draw attention to their plight through nonviolent means. The Great March of Return a few years ago was an attempt to have peaceful marches to the borders of the Gaza Strip, where they were met with sniper fire from the Israeli side. Large numbers of people were killed. It produced some stories in U.S. news media, but very little outrage, I would say, and nothing along the lines of a demand that this occupation, whose brutality could not be more viscerally demonstrated, needs to end. That was not the response. That was it was something that was happening far away and not of particular concern. There are attempts to address the issue of the occupation through nonviolent means like boycotts, which are an effective tool to change the behavior of people in power. And in the case of the boycott against the occupation, there are actually laws passed in many U.S. states forbidding people to take part in such a boycott. It's very, I think, dubious on First Amendment grounds, but there does not seem to be a lot of feeling that this is either unfair, unjust, to prevent people from organizing in a nonviolent way to put pressure on a situation that they see as objectionable. To make that a crime does not seem to trouble many people in our establishment media. So you see kind of a restriction of the kinds of avenues that are available to change this horrific situation.
And yet, Dr. David Gibbs, I've got about 90 seconds left. You see something that you didn't see 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You see protests or demonstrations, should I say, in support of Palestinian rights. And let me be very clear. I think that it's important to show Israeli pain, to show what's happening on that side. I think it's also important for us to see what's happening in Gaza. Because when I see Anderson Cooper in Tel Aviv, it looks like a resort city. Nothing's happening there. Is it all happening in Gaza? Dr. Gibbs.
What we do need is a balanced approach to our sympathy for suffering. I mean, we did see many videos of the horrific attack on the music festival, and many people, including myself, said, "Gee, my son, my daughter, go to music festivals. That could have been them," and that's a reasonable feeling. On the other hand, one didn't see a picture, and or it's harder to see a picture of a video of a Palestinian father holding his dead infant daughter instead of saying goodbye to his dead infant daughter. One doesn't see that sort of thing so much. And, one has to basically accept that human life is basically the same. And, Palestinians are as much entitled to live their lives as Israelis are. I don't think the media has fully accepted that. Certainly the coverage does not reflect that. And so we do need basically is an acceptance of the fact that Palestinians should have the same rights as Israelis, and they don't. They clearly don't. Israel has two separate sets of laws for all practical purposes. One for Israeli citizens and one for Palestinians under Israeli occupation. And that's completely unjustifiable, and it's inexcusable. The United States is backing it.
Let's keep talking about it, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278. What is the way out? What is the way through this? What is the way out? You can't shoot your way out of war, everybody. You can't. You've got to make peace. But you can't have peace without justice. You can't. You can have quiet without justice, but you can't have peace. Dr. David Gibbs, University of Arizona, historian, and of course, Jim Narakis, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Thank you so much for being with us today. We've got John Nichols coming up to talk about this. And, they say that the United States government can help, but how do we do that with no Speaker of the House? They have the power of the purse. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Jim Narakis and David Gibbs, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to be on.
Oh, yeah. And look, always. I just, I'm just trying to get more of the, more of a balanced narrative out here because it's, I was struck.
That's so important.
Well, yeah, I was struck when I was watching Anderson Cooper report last night, and I have always enjoyed his reporting. I've always, but now that he's a father, I'm like, oh, Anderson, why are you over there? Oh my gosh, you got babies at home, but there you go.
So much.
Oh my gosh. But when I see him, when I look at Tel Aviv, I'm like, because I have friends, who are Jewish, who spend a lot of time in Tel Aviv. And, throughout Israel, they have beautiful homes over there. And I'm like, please, it looks so, they're like, you should come with me. It's really great. I'm like, honey, I'm a little too freaked out. I don't want some bomb dropped on me. Oh, that never happens here. I'm like, okay, but well, then where's all this fighting happening? Because I certainly didn't see it last night in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv looked
Just sent you a text.
fabulous. Just, it looked like nothing was happening there.
Israel is a relatively wealthy country, and many Israelis live lives that are somewhat comparable to what we have here in terms of standard of living. Obviously, very different from what they have in Gaza.
Oh boy. I mean, but I was just struck by the lack of violence in Tel Aviv. I mean, and he wasn't in his Kevlar jacket, helmet, none of that. He was just standing, on a balcony or maybe on a rooftop talking. And I said, okay, so is all the fighting happening in Gaza? I mean, and now you have the IDF in Gaza, and and no one's embedded with them because I fear that is going to be very bloody. And when you have the Israeli military spokesman saying that we are focused on damage and not accuracy, oh my gosh! I said, whoa. Are you serious right now? So what are you going to do? You all just going to indiscriminately kill people? Oh, wow. How's that going to work? I mean, because the thing is, this conflict is also viewed very differently all around the world. And I think Americans don't understand that. We're only 4.5% of the world, everybody. This conflict is viewed very differently when you leave the United States. Very differently.
Yeah.
Am I not right?
Thank you. Yeah. I'm going to have to duck out now.
Oh, sending you much love. And please give my love to Janine.
I sure will.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
No.
Bye-bye.
Next time. Absolutely. John Nichols, how are you? John? Oh, okay. David, I know you've got
Hey, I'm with you.
Thank you.
This is John Nichols.
Thank you. Oh, boy. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. We've got a lot to talk about today. And oh, boy.
Santita, I was on mute for a moment there, just letting you know that I am with you. It's John Nichols.
Oh, no. I know your voice. Thank you. It's
okay.
Boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Just, it seems like everybody's...
Terrible times.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's really tough.
30 seconds.
It is. And it's haunting. And I think that people do struggle often to deal with something like this. And that's good. We should. It shouldn't be easy.
Well, speak to that, please. This is a lot.
10 seconds.
All right, coming in right now.
It is a lot. It is.
Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am greedy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. You know what time it is. It's Tuesday, it's the bottom of the second hour, and we are talking with John Nichols, national correspondent for The Nation magazine, New York Times best-selling writer. It's okay to be mad about capitalism. Wow. He and Bernie Sanders have a heck of a book that I hope you will go on and get. It is incredible, and it is deservedly a New York Times bestseller. Talk to us. I mean, I'm seeing it seems like the tensions have ratcheted up. I've heard Prime Minister Netanyahu referred to the Palestinians as animals. I felt that was out of order and quite frankly racist, something that really, really bothered me. Then you have the Israeli army official who admits that the Gaza bombing campaign is, according to Haaretz, it's focused on damage and not on accuracy. And then, but you have this Hamas attack, and but it's happening all in a context in which we've really not been seeking peace, because you can't seek peace, John, without establishing justice. And I keep going back to what Reverend Jackson has been saying for more than 40 years, that Israeli security and Palestinian justice are married to each other. So when I look at the news and I only see the Israeli pain, and we should see the Israeli pain, these people are frightened. Because after we've seen all the military people talk and talk strategy and all of that, it's the civilians, it's those of us on the ground who are feeling this. So these are mothers and fathers and children who are scared, who are looking for their loved ones, but it's happening on the Palestinian side, and we need to hear that too. We're not. You know, I mean, and that is dangerous to me when you only have one side, when you only have one side, and then we're trying to get to the other side when lions and lambs have to lie down together in order to work this out. I mean, at some point, the Israelis and the Palestinians are going to have to come together if we're going to have peace. We can fight all we want to, but you're not going to fight when you're negotiating a peace. You can't do that. Oh, what is your assessment of this, John Nichols?
Well, I think you've laid out a lot of important thoughts there, and I think that my assessment, like that of many, is that this is complicated. This is not easy. This is not something where it's wise to go to quick or simplistic reactions. There should be core principles that come to this, and the first is that we condemn the taking of Jewish life, and we condemn the taking of Muslim life, and we condemn the taking of Christian life in this region. And all of that is happening now, right? And we should be horrified by it. And we should put a firm line under each of those statements, because it's the beginning, I hope, of a place where we talk about, some sort of not just peace, but also justice. And I say this as somebody who spent a lot of time in the region. I've been many times to Israel, many times to Palestine, reported from there in times of great misery, but also times of great hope. I was lucky enough to be in Israel and Palestine during the period of the First Intifada, when there really was an effort to have a civil rights movement, an effort to achieve, through a lot of struggle, and it wasn't always pretty and it wasn't always easy, but to achieve some sort of peace agreement. And there really did at times seem to be a great deal of hope. And I think that that's what your father tapped into even before the Intifada, in 1984 and especially 1988, with the help of Jim Zogby and others, a desperate attempt to get the Democratic Party, and that's the starting point, not the end, but an attempt to get the Democratic Party to acknowledge the suffering of Palestinians, right? To say that this is something you cannot neglect. And that was very, very difficult, those platform fights and those struggles at the convention in '88, but very important. And I think that it had resonance. I do believe that in the Bush administration that followed in the early '90s, there was a genuine searching for a way to find, maybe not to go so far as to say that the Bush administration was trying to do everything that you would want them to do, but at least there was some effort to organize a process that might lead to peace, might lead to some sort of agreement. And what frustrates me is that that's a long time ago. That's the better part of 40 years ago. And there was hope, I think, in those times, when Rabin came to power in Israel, and, a man of the military, certainly somebody respected by some of the hardliners, but who said, we've got, the way out of this is to find some way to peace. And I was there in the aftermath of Rabin's assassination, and it was, you could feel the slipping away and the loss of that sense of possibility. I say all this just to tell you that this journey has been a long one, and it has been very, very difficult. And if you understand that, then you start to understand why people on both sides tend to go to harsher and crueler positions, because they come to this sense that they've seen it all before, they've been through so many things,
and they don't believe that there's any way to get to peace, right? That they believe that, one way or the other, one side has got to prevail above the other. And I think this is where the United States needs to come in, where European nations and where countries around the world need to come in. And that is to say, there has to be a way to peace. There has to be some way to get through this. And there is a need for urgent diplomacy. There is a need for urgent negotiations, not somewhere down the line after 1,000 more people have been killed, but now in an immediate moment. And it frustrates me that I don't see that sense of urgency from a lot of the people who should be bringing it to the table. You do hear it from some at the UN. You hear it from some at Human Rights Watch and other groups. There are groups, that are talking about this. But I go back to former President Carter, who we all revere and we speak of in such warm terms now, and hope that he has a longer life than he has already had. But one of the things that's important to remember is that President Carter, who wrestled with these issues for a very long time, back to the 70s, and actually was the president who got us closest to a peace in the region, really did achieve some remarkable things. President Carter wrote a book, better part of, 20-some years ago, in which he argued that you have to resolve this question of Gaza and the West Bank, this question of the circumstance of the Palestinians. And it has to be resolved in a way that achieves justice, and i.e., that gives them sovereignty over their own land and some sense of a real future. And Carter said that. He was attacked for that, right? He was very harshly criticized by a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I would say that this is a time to pause and maybe go back and listen to and look at what Jimmy Carter said then, because he said it in a time that was very difficult. He didn't say it in an easy moment. Jimmy Carter never acted in easy moments. He was acting in some of the toughest moments back in the 70s after the periods of great violence. And yet he said, this is the time when we need to act. And I would hope that President Carter's lesson resonates into our time, because we need, as Americans who are so intimately involved economically and militarily in that region, we need to be, I think, a much louder voice for peace and reconciliation.
But it seems that when you're calling for peace and reconciliation, you just see Fareed Zakaria, people are shocked that he had a guest who was calling who was looking at the pain on both sides. Who, when you call for peace and when you acknowledge the pain on both sides, I want to see, I want to hear the Israeli stories. I do. They're hard. They're hard to listen to, but we need to, and we have to hear the Palestinian stories, and we're not hearing those. And when you have that kind of imbalance, obviously it helps you to favor one side over the other, but it doesn't help us get to peace, John.
That's precisely right. I can tell you a story. A quick one of many, many years ago, in a time, in the period of the Intifada, when there was a lot of tension. And one night I was staying in Bethlehem, and I was in a hostel, in a small hotel. And I decided that I was going to walk down to Manger Square, which is the historic location where Christians believe that Jesus Christ was born. And my Palestinian Christian hosts at this hotel said, "Oh, you shouldn't go. It's way too dangerous. The Israelis have set up military checkpoints and that, and it's very, very dangerous, and you really shouldn't go out there." And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to go. I'm here for this day, and I want to go to this place." And so I left, and I went down, and in a few minutes, I did come upon an Israeli checkpoint, and the Israelis said, "Oh, you really shouldn't go any further. We can't stop you here, but you shouldn't go any further because the Palestinians are all around and they're very dangerous and they're very threatening and unsettling, and you really should go back to your hotel because it's not safe to be out at night." And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to go on. I just want to go down to the manger." And they said, "Well, we can't stop you, but we really warn you, it's very, very dangerous." And so I went on, and I got down by the manger, and it was a lovely night. And I thought, or by the church, and I thought it was a lovely night. I'm going to walk down to Shepherd's Field, which is a mile or so away. So I'm walking down the hill to where the shepherds saw the star and saw the angels. And as I walked down that road, I was about a few hundred feet. A couple of men appeared, and they had beards and clothing that suggested they were Muslim. I spoke just a tiny bit of Arabic, not enough. I was inarticulate, but they were clearly stopping me, right? And they were telling me, "Don't go any further." And I was thinking, well, maybe I did get myself into something I shouldn't have gotten into. And they made me stop and stay. And one of the guys ran to a house, and a guy came out of the house, and he was an imam, and he spoke English, and he said to me, "What are you doing out here?" And I said, "Well, I was going to walk down to Shepherd's."
New caller.
And they said, "Well, these men are very concerned for you because they're worried that, there's so much tension and so much violence here, and you have to be careful. So I'm going to ask them to walk with you to Shepherd's Field and make sure that nothing bad happens." Right? And so we walked down, we looked at the field, and we came back. And I walked peacefully back past the Israelis and back ultimately to my hotel. The reason I tell that story is that I was the stranger. And in the great religious texts of Islam, Christianity, Judaism, there is a charge to welcome the stranger. And everyone did. Everyone there, Christians, Jews, Muslims, welcomed me and worried about me, wanted to make sure that I was safe. And if they have that instinct within them, if all these people have that instinct within them, then that's the grounding for building peace, right? If they welcome the stranger, right, and watch out for the stranger, then surely there's something we can build on to watch out for one another, right? And I know it's hard, but I know as someone who has walked these streets and been in these places, in Palestine, in Israel, and other countries of the region, that there's something good in these people, right? And they have had it. It's been so horrible and so difficult for so long that I think it's sometimes it's even hard for individuals to find the good within themselves. But it's there. And I think it's our responsibility, our deep responsibility, to recognize that humanity in the people in Gaza, and the people in Israel, and people in the West Bank, and to try and build from that, right? And you don't build from that by making excuses for the killing of innocents, for the killing of civilians, for kidnappings, and for violence. You don't do that. The way you do it is to say, I know there is something within all of these people that can be a basis for peace.
Let me go to a couple of callers because I want some people to weigh in because a lot of people have a lot of feelings about this. Let me go to Anita. What's your question or comment?
Oh, Santita, I think the Israel people have an interpretation of their way of living, and they have not really allowed other people to fit in with that. And they cannot live in a world and be isolated like that. And other people have come to some truths in their lives too, whether they're communists. We have to live by truth because we can't live by things that are false. Okay? And the Arabs Israel never accepted the Arabs and how it came into it being into their family. So we got a family conflict on top of it, religious misinterpretation, and Israel's isolating themselves from everyone else, feeling they have this truth that no one else has. And they don't. Other people have this truth, and Christ came to let people know that we make mistakes, but we're going to straighten it out. And from what I understand, I don't think that's in Israel's religion. And that's a major problem with the solving conflict with them. They want you to solve it their way, but they only accept that even they make mistakes. We can't work with that, Santita. No one's perfect on this earth, and not to say that people can't change and do better, but definitely, arrogance can come into that type of situation, and then you isolating yourself where no one else can fit in with your philosophies. And, there's a lot of education and training into all this human living, even in communism. I mean, there's truth, like I said, there's truth everywhere. And until Israel accepts that they ain't the only all-knowing, and the Christians accept that Christ did teach them something, that it's okay to have flaws and straighten them out, and put that on Israel, that you're not perfect, and that's okay. We'll accept that, but we need to get some of this straightened out so people are not isolated with you. We're not going to get it with.
Anita has spoken. Sending you much love, Anita. David from Michigan, what's on your mind?
Yeah, there's some history here that I don't know people that it's not being told here, but when Israel was created, it was a partitioning by Great Britain. Mm-hmm. When it became a state in 1948, the Arab states attacked it, wanting to throw it into the sea. They wanted them people that settled there out of there completely. And they did not. They would not recognize Israel's right to exist. And what happened with the help of the United States and Great Britain, eventually there was a truce, and then they was attacked again in '56. And with the help of Great Britain and France, Israel, they expanded, and they went back to their previous border. Well, you go further, up 1967. Now, the Gaza Strip was part of Egypt. And when Israel attacked, they took the Sinai and Gaza, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank. You heard nothing about Palestinian rights or anything. Only after Israel had taken that land through war, and what happened was the Gulf of Aqaba was blocked. Israel had to, they had no choice but to attack so they could get supplies in, because they were being cut off. And this has been, this part of the story hasn't been told. And unless I'm missing something here,
we were talking about that.
And then another part,
actually, earlier
earlier
in the show, David. About the Balfour Agreement. Between really that this was a construct of the British, and this was a colonial project. And I think that's part of the problem too. And taking people's land is always problematic. I mean, when you see that with indigenous people here in the United States, when you see it in South Africa, when you see it throughout Africa, it's always a problem. Is there a way through it? Sure. But it's one of the things, stay right there, David, that's very, very hard to find, John Nichols, is this. If you want to find out the percentage of land that Palestinians have lost, you can't find that anywhere. But what you can find are counters that they keep telling you that the maps are a lie. The maps aren't a lie. You see the West Bank and you see the Gaza Strip. They've lost not one half of their land, not 3/4 of it, 90+% of it. And, and now the Gaza Strip is the most congested place on earth. You can't relegate people to, just into a portion of where they used to live, John.
Yeah. Look, good place to begin is to understand that Gaza is primarily a refugee camp, right? It is for refugees. These are people who did lose their land, right? And they are, as you say, they're concentrated in one place now, huge numbers. I think there's a couple things to keep in perspective here. And I say this again as somebody who spent a lot of time in Israel and Palestine. I have met Israelis and Palestinians who love one another, who work together, and I don't mean work together in politics. I mean work together as in their lives, who help one another build houses and married, form communities. I mean, this is important to understand, and so there is a human side to this that gets lost quite often, and a sense that these are two peoples that are so radically separate. The fact of the matter is that there are Israelis and Israeli Jews who have devoted their entire lives to seeking peace and to seeking justice. And there are Palestinians, Muslims and Christians, who have devoted their entire lives to seeking peace and justice. And they know each other, and they have worked with one another. Unfortunately, in moments like this, they get marginalized, and they aren't listened to. And one of our jobs is to lift these people up, and so that the world sees that there are Jews and Christians and Muslims who want peace in this region, who are committed to seeking it, who want justice in this region and are committed to seeking it. And it is so vital that their voices be a part of this discussion, right? And it is so rare. And this falls a lot on our media. Our media fails us again and again and again. But my sister, it is so vital. It is so vital to have these deep and sometimes painful and difficult discussions, which may cause someone to be offended or someone to be upset. At the heart of it, we have to affirm the humanity of all the people in Israel, in the West Bank, in Gaza, and to recognize that out of that humanity, there has to be a way to peace and justice. It does exist, but it will only be achieved if we amplify the voices of those who are seeking it, rather than simply the voices who are angry and violent and calling for retribution.
And remember, everyone, no one's an animal. That's why
no one.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, well, I just pray that he will see the error of his ways and words and correct them. We all matter. I hope that the corporate media, you will press them to show the pain everywhere. There's a lot of pain everywhere, and there is context that is not shown. And so what we need to do...
Santita?
Yes. I got about 30 seconds.
If I just say very quickly, I'll give you less than 30. I urge people to follow Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper. They have an English edition. Haaretz is speaking a lot of truth to power on all sides. It's a very bold newspaper that should be read.
Haaretz. Love you. Sending you all so much love. Thank you, John. I know you're running. I must say
I'm afraid, but thank you for letting me be part of a very important conversation.
Every week, what is your final word to the audience?
Now, my final word is, as I was saying as we were going out, do look for sources of information that really do try to tell the truth as best they can, and to speak to both sides, to understand the suffering of everyone involved. That's why I value Haaretz. I'm going to write about them and write about the work that they're doing. It's unbelievably important, but it's also unbelievably difficult.
I read them every day.
And they are lifting up Arab voices. They're lifting up Christian, Muslim, Jewish voices, Israelis. And I just think that, look, I don't have solutions here. All I can tell you is I genuinely believe that the more information we have, the deeper information we have, the closer we get to the kind of understanding and discussion that we vitally need.
And I will say this as you go, John, to really characterize this discussion, to characterize the struggle for what it really is. This is really not about religion. This is about political power. This is about land ownership. Yes. So people get over how you who you are religiously or who you are not. No one cares about that, really. This is about political power, because political power is what divvied up the land in the first place. So let's be very, very clear. Yeah, I mean, look, really,
and it was foreign powers
yes,
that were looking for easy solutions.
A European colonial project, once again.
It is, yeah.
And you know, and they have torn up the world with this. I mean, I look at what's happening in Africa. I look at, India. I mean, this is what they do. It has to stop, John.
And it happened here in America.
Oh,
we celebrated Indigenous People Day yesterday, and saw the brutal reality. Yeah, but I do have to go. I apologize, but let me
please, but please, I want you to give your closing thought.
Just this core concept that I know people in Israel and Palestine who get up every morning and try to, achieve peace and justice, and do so at a very human level by maintaining relationships with people across borders and across, supposed differences. They are the root of a peace process. And it is so vital to bring their voices forward, because if we simply allow the noisiest and angriest voices to be, our touchstone here, this is going to happen again.
No,
and
we're going to
be worse
here
the next time.
We're going to stay here because those are the people who've had the mic.
Because there's a great Canadian folk singer, Bruce Cockburn, who is a devout Christian. He spent a lot of time in this region. And Bruce Cockburn had a incredible statement many years ago. He said, "The trouble with normal is it always gets worse." And so if we accept this as normal, what's happening, or if we say, this is as far as we can go, right? This is our reality. It won't just stay this way. It will get worse. Mm-hmm. And so there has to be a point where we say, we're not going to accept any of this as normal. It's not normal to kill people. Not normal to kill innocents. It is not normal to indiscriminately murder. It is not normal. And if we begin with that basic concept, then we go to the next concept to say that what is normal is to love, and to love one another, and to love people who are the same as us and people who are different from us. There is not a religious tradition that doesn't teach that.
That's right.
And if we just go back to what we say on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, and say it every day of the week, I think we begin to get a lot closer to where we need to be.
Absolutely.
And I do have to go.
Sending you so much love. Sending you so much love. Everybody, please follow John Nichols. Nichols Uprising. That's right. He really kicks up a lot of dust. Love you, John. Sending you so much love today.
Be so strong.
Oh, you stay strong. Thank you. And thank you for being such a strong and true voice. Everybody, let's look at this conflict for what it is. It really is a political one. It's not a religious one. It's framed that way by the corporate media, and then so when you see people, Muslim, Jew, and Christian, and Hindu, et cetera, come together, we say, oh, see, we can get together. No. This is about power, political power. This is about people and their land that was taken from them. So now where do we go from here? You got to give up something in order to get something. That's the way life works. So let's just get real about this. Get real about it. You do have people in Israel and in the Palestinian territories and in Palestine who are fighting for peace. They can't get the mic. The person who has the mic is the prime minister who's calling Palestinians animals. That's not right. And he needs to be called out about that. There's nothing right about that at all, ever. About calling someone an animal. No. And it's racist. Yeah, it is. It's racist. And that needs to be called out too. But this is a political struggle. Make no mistake about it. Just like The struggle in South Africa and throughout Africa, yeah, black, white, no, it's a political struggle. I want my land back, which means oil rights, because the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, it turns out they have a lot of oil too. Yeah, it's all of that. So look at this thing for what it really is. This is a power. This is a push about power. Let's get real about this. And just know that you don't have the right to take from people. You can share, but you don't have the right to share. I mean, 96% of the water in the Gaza Strip, in the Gaza territory, is undrinkable. And let's be very clear, Israel is committing a war crime right now by walling everybody off. It's a war crime. And they're wrong. And when you say that, can I get on TV saying that? No. Can I barely keep a radio show? Yeah, I mean, if people would want to kick me off, but fortunately, this is independent. WCPT gives me space, and I'm seeking to be fair. Because I don't want to see Israelis hurt, and I don't want to see Palestinians hurt, and they are equal in my eyes. When I see these frightened Israelis' mothers looking for their children, looking for their families, saying, my child, I think, is hostage, is being held hostage, my heart breaks. But your heart needs to break for the Palestinian mother too, and the Palestinian father, who we see coming out of these bombed buildings carrying their dead children. When the Israeli military spokesman says, we're not looking for accuracy, we're just looking to damage. That's ungodly. Yeah, I said it. I'll add more to it before I take anything from it. It's ungodly. So don't you put religion in this. This is about political power. And if you don't put God in the center of any fight that you have, then you have something else and it's wicked. And this is wrong. And we've got to go another way, the right way. Before my grandmother died, maybe the year or so before she died, she started really setting things in order. You know, if there was a misunderstanding between anybody, she wanted to talk to you. And she would say things that resonate in my life right now. She's been gone 6 years. She said, there is one way, the right way. That's it. Ain't no gray. One way, the right way. So what are we going to do? And remember, this is a political struggle. This is about people wanting their land. That's what this is. This is about a European colonial project. That is what set this in motion. Because the British wanted the Jewish community to support them in the First World War effort. That's something we don't talk about. That's what this is. They wanted the Jewish community to support them in the war effort. So they said, okay, so what we will do is go to Palestine. Now, mind you, they were offered Uganda. They were offered a part of the United States. They were offered a lot of places. They said, no, we're going to take that place. Okay. Whole lot of places have been offered up in this project, interestingly enough, that had nothing to do with what they saw in the Bible. But they said, no, we want to go here. Okay. We got to get things right. Got to get things right. But understand what the Balfour Project was about. This was a European colonial project because the British community wanted the Jewish buy-in on the First World War. That's it. They were given a portion of land when they went into Palestine and kicked people out of their homes, okay. But then they kept expanding and kept on expanding and kept on waiting, and not just expanding, removing people. You can't do that. You cannot do that. And remember, mothers cry everywhere. That's part of the beauty of what happened in the Civil War in the United States. When mothers in the North and the South said, whoever is shot here, I'm going to take care of that child. In the North, I'm going to take care of the rebels. In the South, I'm going to take care of the men in blue. Because I hope that some mother will show my child some grace. That's what we need to pray for. Enough of this back and forth, tit for tat. It does not work. My father often says, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth leaves you gumming it. You ain't got no teeth and you cannot see. Just doesn't work. It's not working. And for us not to really to understand the real contours and parameters of this struggle means that we're missing a whole lot. It's a political struggle, everybody. It's about land. Everybody, the religion is incidental to the mix. Nobody cares about that. That ain't the real point. The real point is land. Okay, so let's deal with that. When you talk to indigenous people in the United States, it's about land. Robert Mugabe was fine. It was okay. Well, you're fighting for freedom. We want Rhodesia to become, we want the British, y'all, we want our country back. So Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. Oh, okay, that was all right. And he kept on having tea with Queen Elizabeth. But the problem became when he said, now, Queen Elizabeth, I want my land back. Oh, she stopped having tea with him. True story. Because he wanted his land back, but he is beloved, God rest his soul, throughout Africa. Because he did, ironically enough, what Mandela did not do. Mandela said, give me the vote. We'll work everything else out later. Mugabe said, give me my land back. Because there's gold up in them there hills. There are diamonds up under there. So he has become, oh my goodness, the boogie bear of the West. Yeah, because he wants his stuff back. That's what all this stuff is about. Yeah, Robert, that part. Deal with that part. Those parts. And at some point, I'm going to tell you, the book of Revelations tells us that God has won. Justice is going to be achieved. Now, what side are you going to be on? That's the question. When your name is called, can God say you are on my side? That's the question. Where do you stand in this time of challenge? Hope you stand with God. And that's with justice. And that's with love. That's with treating people fairly. That's what all of this is. That's what this is. And we have to get right there. Sending you all much love, everybody. I'm on the side of justice. Look, I'm trying to be on God's side. Okay. That's why, when people say that, I have talked about both sides, but I've also talked about a side that you don't hear about, the Palestinian story. I don't see any Palestinian mamas crying or Palestinian fathers carrying their dead babies. You need to see all of it. When you see all of it, you'll be sick of all of it and you'll want to change. And it's happening on your dime. We're paying for this. While you have people who are starving in the United States of America. No. So no, I'm gonna seek to stand for justice. And I get it. And I'm gonna be on God's side. That was the only thing that always threw me off about we shall overcome. God is on our side. No. Then as I really began to understand the Bible and the teachings therein, I said, no, God is not on our side. I'm on God's side. And as the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman, one of the great theologians of all time, said, God is on the side of the oppressed. Remember, Jesus was born down in a pit with animals and their waste. Now, if Jesus can be born there, and if he identified with the least of these, what about you? What about you? What about all of us? There's hurt and pain on all sides there, and it needs to stop. And the only way to stop it is for it to stop. My mother used to tell me about my weight as I struggled with it. She said, honey, the only way you're going to do this, first you got to stop eating. Well, there was more to it than that. Pieces that she didn't understand. There was much more to it. There was some pain that I had to arrest. And as I began to do that, even more weight fell off over the past couple of years. First thing you can't do, you can't just continue to put off the diet and say, well, one day I'm going to do this. And you know what? No, you got to stop that. Okay. And then everything else will fall in line. So think about that. First, the first thing police are going to tell you to do is drop your weapons. And they say it from afar because they ain't walking into no foolishness either. Drop your weapons. Stop, everybody. Stop. Stop. Now we're going to come together and find out what the story is. And then we're going to seek some justice. How about that? Beat your swords into plowshares and study war no more. You do best what you study most and what you do the most. We war a lot. We study war a lot. We don't have a peace college. We have a war college. Everybody who's talking about this, everybody who's talking about everything on TV, they're police or they're military officers. Why don't you have peace activists? Why don't you have Medea Benjamin? Why don't you have Phyllis Bennis? Why don't you have people who are looking for peace? Because that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for war, and that's all we're finding. And in a minute, ain't nobody going to be left. So you must demand something else. Peace is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of justice and love. Demand that and be that, which is why I try to conduct the show in a particular way. I don't want people disrespected. I don't care whatever my political disagreement is with you. I am not going to disrespect you. I'm not saying I'm not going to get hot under the collar. I'm not saying I'm not going to get upset with you from time to time, but I'm going to hug it out in the end. How about that? I'm not perfect. But I do want us to begin to talk and get to the real issues. The core of this issue, at the crux of it, it's a political issue. It's about land. I think there were like 4 or 5 nations in the Commonwealth when Queen Elizabeth's father died. She went and scrambled and found her 53, up to 53 or 54 of them. And they're all 95% of them, 94% of them are color. So if you want justice and all of this, well, maybe the royal family needs to give all them big diamonds and jewels back that they refuse to give to the places they stole them from and give people their land back. No, they're not going to do that. I don't want philanthropy. I want my piece of the pie. So they can all freeze with the Invictus Games and everything else. I think that's lovely. But I want my piece of the pie. You've been wealthy on my back long enough. How about that? So, hey, reach out to Joy. I know Joy. But these are the whole facts. These are the whole facts. And we have to be honest about that. I know when my parents called for a balanced and just policy, they paid a hell of a price for it, and everyone in my family did. And I would not change a thing. My father, even today, because when I was read the Riot Act in my Harvard interview, the question was, are you basically going to disavow your father? My mother knew that interview was going to go south, which is why she wanted to go with me. I said, no, Mom, it's mother. It's going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. When I got home, she said, I knew it. Because we had simply said you got to have a balanced Middle East policy. And we paid a hell of a price for it. And my father feels bad. He was saying, my work cost you a spot at Harvard. I said, if you think that I would trade Harvard for you, you are out of your mind. I already had a full scholarship to Howard. I already had a full scholarship to Spelman. Mom asked me to do that. I did that. I'm good. And if that's the cost of the ticket, to disavow you and justice and standing with the oppressed and standing up for the oppressed, they can keep it. I don't want it. Besides, this comfortable house I'm in was paid for by 2 folks who met and married at an HBCU. I think we're going to be just fine. How about that? So, oh, no, I used to live in Dr. Clark's building. I knew Dr. Clark in Harlem. Yeah. We lived in the same building. I was very, very honored to be able to talk with him. Absolutely. And I'm glad I went to a Howard where I had a Dr. Ron Walters and a Dr. Mary Frances Berry and some of the great intellectual giants who could give me the unfettered truth. Oh, yeah. W.E.B. Du Bois, yeah, he finished at Harvard, but he started at Fisk. Mic drop. Oops. Okay. So let's keep that in mind, everybody. And remember, this is a political struggle, and this needs to be made right. Everybody needs to be made whole. Everybody. You can't shoot up these Palestinians indiscriminately. We're not looking for accuracy. We're just looking to do damage. Really? That is insane. And it is ungodly. At the same time, going and attacking these folks at this festival, whew, can't do that either. No one will ever see you as having the moral high ground. If Black folks had grabbed those guns that night that Dr. King's home was bombed, he said, put your guns down and go home. We're not going to win this fight. Not only are we outgunned, but there's a way that, number one, my religion teaches me that we've got to have the strength to love. We've got to do that. But if you want to be politically strategic, oh no. If they see if the corporate media can project Black people as being violent and seeking revenge, we'll never win. And we won because he went another way. You got to have strength to love. It's easy to hate. It's easy to call someone an animal. It's easy to degrade someone. It's hard to lift people up, particularly when you don't like them. But you must do it. That's the only way this is going to work. So, I love you, everybody, and I'm going to get on out of here. So, please keep looking and call the corporate media and tell them that you want balanced coverage. Tell them that's what you want. You want people calling for peace, not quiet. And you want to see some Palestinian families who are scared to death right now, who are being attacked. Remember, 96% of the water in the Gaza is undrinkable. The UN said that by 2020, it would be unlivable. It would be so filthy. They're not filthy people. They're being forced to live in filthy conditions. That's not right. That's not right. And don't put this on all Israelis and Jews. We had Phyllis Bennis, we had Medea Benjamin, and there are so many others who were on there yesterday. Medea Benjamin catches all kinds of devilment because she stands up for peace and justice, as does Phyllis Bennis. The same people who attacked my family tried to shoot out Phyllis Bennis's home. So just think about that, everybody. Think about that. It's about the principle. Phyllis Bennis said, hey, I was a young Jewish child and I was taught to, to stand up for Israel no matter what. She said, then I went on the kibbutz and then I saw the root and I had a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then I started studying and I found out about how this project was founded in colonialism and rooted in that. She said, I had to think, because she's a principled woman. Not just a people-driven woman. My people, me. I want someone who looks like me. Get over that. You need to have someone who is like God. How about that? So let's pull for peace, everybody. And everybody, thank you, D. Ray and Angela. Be entitled to your opinion. I want y'all to hug it out before I get off of here. Because everybody's entitled to their opinion. And don't be mad about it. Y'all, let's just have our opinions and let's continue to have them and respect that. Please, I disagree with things I thought about last week. And so, it's okay. And you're entitled to like who you like and not like who you don't like. But let's just try and lift each other up. Okay, sending you all so much love. Hug it out today, y'all. Hug it out. Hug it out. Angela and D-Ray, hug it out. I'm loving you. I'm loving all of you. God bless you. Have a great day. Alex Castaneda, thank you for a wonderful show. I always love working with this young man. He does such great work. And I love you all, everybody. Have a great one.